Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us this evening. Uh, before I officially introduce this event, let me just put the ball rolling. Today, India has become the world's second largest PPE manufacturer in a matter of less than 100 days. This is a remarkable story of an ambition, grizz, innovation, which this industry has been showing from the day one. It also shows that the limited possibilities that open up when India's government at the center, its states and the country, the dynamic private sector when they collaborate. If India can make this template for the entire textile value chain, foreign companies will find it an increasingly attractive investment destination. It may therefore be a good idea to see how the learnings from this exercise can be mapped, internalized, and applied across the textile chain. Today, we are extremely fortunate to have among us the experts from both academia and the industries. Before I introduce, I wanted to give my special thanks to TEXPROCIL and its chairman, Mr. Srinivasan. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for joining hands with us. And sir, it's over to you now.
Thank you, friends. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all the participants to this knowledge revitalizing seminar on new learnings in textiles technology in the post-COVID world. This is being organized by TEXPROCIL in association with Business Standard. The idea of holding such a webinar was first proposed in an internal meeting that TEXPROCIL had with the Honorable Minister of Textiles and Women and Child Development, Srimati Smriti Zubin Irani. We are pleased to have the support of Business Standard in organizing the webinar and also welcome Mr. Narasimhan from Chennai, who is the moderator for today's session. Mr. Narasimhan has a lot of insights into this technology advancement in various sectors, including textiles across the country. We are also grateful to have with us today two eminent panelists from India's top institutions, Dr. Ashwini Agarwal from the Department of Textile Technology at IIT Delhi and Professor Asim Tiwari from the Department of Mechanical Engineering at IIT Mumbai, who have agreed to talk to us today about all the new technological advancements in the textile industry. We also have with us a young panel expert, the entrepreneur, Mr. Rohan Patodia, co-partner at Dusit Materials. Mr. Patodia comes from a family which has a rich heritage in textiles, and he has made successful forays into technical textiles and is here to share his practical experiences in deploying in the Internet of Things solutions for utility management in an Indian factory. The textile industry, as you know, was the forefront of what was the Industrial Revolution back in the 18th century and was one of the first industries to use modern industrial production methods. We've come a long way since then, and many innovations have led to improvement and efficiency over the years. As we speak today, much has been said about how the nation can use the COVID-19 opportunity to redefine its future. Can we turn the crisis into an opportunity? And what kind of machinery will the industry need to raise its productivity post-COVID? The textile world is now abuzz with the news of the launch of antiviral textiles in products. Indian textile companies have converted the pandemic-induced economic crisis into an opportunity by coming out with antiviral textiles. I'm sure our expert, Dr. Ashwini Agarwal, will bring out more perspectives with his expertise on this subject. It's time for the industry to introspect and bring in scientific temper. It's time to look at new possibilities and leverage new technology. Our panel expert, Professor Asim Tiwari, has a strong understanding of using artificial intelligence and IoT in the textile process. As social distancing and no contact processes are becoming norm today for conducting business, I'm sure his presentation will be of great help in new technologies in our business. The Indian textile sector post-COVID is aware of the success story of the PPE manufacturing industry. This industry has grown to a size of 100 crores, which speaks a lot for our entrepreneurs. Little did we know that even the MSMEs with scalability and production challenges and environmental norms to follow could join hands with large firms to lead India to become the second largest PPE manufacturer in the world, which is indeed a creditable achievement. With the pandemic here to stay, it will be crucial to focus on building efficiencies that will enable creation of manufacturing excellence, improve cost effectiveness to ward off business risk to the Indian textiles and clothing sector from other manufacturing nations. The discussion in today's webinar will familiarize our manufacturers with the technological means required to maximize their internal capabilities and to work with shorter lead times and tighter margins. We have a challenging future in front of us, and I'm sure the webinar will throw some light on how we need to face it. Thank you very much, and again, a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. With this, we'll start this, session. Our first speaker will be Mr. Dr. Ashwini Agarwal. So, sir, it's now over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would like to thank TEXPROCIL for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share my viewpoint. I'll just share my slides. Can you see my slides?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to discuss a philosophical manner, how we can think about putting value to our textiles, especially cotton textiles, because this is a panel for trying to find what we can do best with our cotton industry. So if we look at the traditional textile industry today, what we find is that most of it, if you look at a global scenario, what we see is that a lot of manufacturing is now moving away from India into Middle East countries, Vietnam, Malaysia, etc., because of the competitiveness, cost-sensitive market in a traditional apparel textile. So what is left is actually a fashion and functional apparel zone, where when we talk about fashion or functional, we really are talking about creating local niche market within the country or abroad and trying to have a better value realization. And other than that, then there's a technical textile segment where there are 12 different segments. I have just listed 3, which are very important, which is home tech, mobile tech, and meditech, where the cotton can play a very good role. So if you look at how USA is doing, because USA is also not supposed to be a very big textile hub, but you will be surprised to know that as per NPCTO report, USA is doing well in some sectors, and they're actually exporting a significant amount of material. In 2018, this is a chart which is given here, where cotton, wool, and fine animal fiber is about 6.7 billion. And they have a fabric export of 9.1 billion, which shows that there is a possibility of actually doing something in traditional as well as functional textile arena by countries like US can also do, and they can export to other countries. So we should also be able to do a better job than them. If you look at the EU, all European Union countries, there also, if you see that in medical textiles and non-wovens, they are doing exceedingly well. They have a trade surplus. They're actually exporting to other countries. And in all other sectors also, they have a fairly good share of market, which they are able to capture and export. So which is important. That means with all the kind of costs which they have in their countries, they're able to survive and they're able to actually export, earn money. So we need to really learn what is that which is making them do or earn these kinds of exports and these kinds of productivity. So factors for growth which has been seen recently, which has changed the textile industry or is changing right now, you may be well aware of this. The first very factor is the fashion and lifestyle. This is with the new generation coming up, the lifestyle has become a call for the day. People are really looking for fashion statements and work profile based lifestyle. So any textile material which we have to put into the market, we need to look at these expanding segments which are now becoming over demanding. Similarly, if you look at new application areas, that means areas based on new jobs kind of online. For example, PP is a medical kind of an area where something is required, or uniform, which is very appropriate for a particular application for a job. The other thing is the consumer preference. Now, consumers are moving towards more green approach. They're looking at something more comfortable, natural, something that is not harming anyone. Social aspects, certain kinds of print and certain kinds of custom or traditional prints or traditional materials or new ethnic designs. So there are a lot of changes in consumer preferences, and consumers have now a say what they want to buy and what they want to hear. And the last point is the environment. Environment is changing. We all know that we are going through very difficult times. Global warming is going up, climate changes are happening, and people are very sensitive to sustainability, which has become a very big issue nowadays. So let me give you some case studies of companies, how they are trying to survive and make money in these times of high competition. So this is a case study of GHCL, which is making bed sheets. And what they have come to, now bed sheets is such a big business, a lot of companies are doing it, but they have tried to make a niche by using fibers from recycled PET. That is polyester bottles, and converting them into fibers, and then mixing them with cotton and making it a sustainable product, something which can find value in the environment from the environment point of view, and then tagging them with that this is actually authentic. So not that something is a marketing gimmick, they're actually doing a job what they're claiming. So they are tagging it using a DNA kind of a molecule from applied DNA science, and they have actually created a market for themselves based on these recycled fibers and cotton mixed bed sheets. Another company which has made a lot of news is 37.5. 37.5 is nothing but body temperature. So what they claim is that their materials are able to keep your body cool or warm depending on the outside conditions. So these are not phase change materials. What they have used are something called volcanic sands, which can have both heat absorbing and liberating properties, and they are able to cool faster by evaporation. So they are able to manage, you can see the figure on the right. So there's a microclimate next to the skin, and they're able to manage the heat and vapor transport by their materials. And thus they are claiming for their customers that they can really do a wonderful job by maintaining comfort levels to a very high degree. So new generation and people who are active and who actively participate in sports and running or cycling, they love to have things like this. And there's a big growing market for such products. This is an Indian startup, Niemann's. What they have come out with is a merino wool based shoes. It's a natural fiber based material. Mostly shoes are synthetic, but they have come out with a merino wool kind of material, which they say that you can wash them and they are comfortable to wear. And they are actually on the sole also, they are using recycled rubber and polymers, which are derived from natural resources. So again, the call here is of sustainability, looking at environment, comfort, and using natural products rather than synthetic products. So they are trying to make a pitch on that. Next slide, which I'm showing here, is of Under Armour, which is a USA company, which again, what they have come up with very small, simple concepts of replacing elastane fiber. So we all use lycra and elastane in our materials for making stretchability, comfort, and better fitting. But what they have come out with the pitch is that elastane is a fiber which has poor durability. It loses its stretchability and relaxation with time. And it has a poor drying time. It holds on to the moisture. It holds on to the odor. So it is not something which is good. So they have replaced it with some another stretchable yarn, which is a textured yarn technique, and use some modified polymers to do the same job as lycra or elastane does. And then they have been with time putting all other kinds of materials so that they can trap heat inside their jacket or whatever textiles they are using, and trying to make comfortable materials. So very small concepts, but trying to market it a unique thing which can bring novelty to the product is what making them find inroads into a very difficult and competitive market. Very recently, Aditya Birla Cellulose has launched another material called antimicrobial fibers. Just 3-4 days back, they have done a launch. And what they are claiming is fashionable, drapable material, which is antiviral, antibacterial, it is odor resistant, it is wash durable, and the biggest pitch is it's natural and sustainable. All the resources are from nature, and when you throw it out, nothing remains and everything can go back to the nature. And to prove that whatever they are claiming is actually you can trace it, you can see that you're getting it in your product. So they have put a tracer technology in it, so that it can be traced up to the final product. So the question comes here is, so these are examples not related just to cotton, but to various kinds of innovations in textile area. Now, since we are more concerned about cotton, let's talk about whether cotton is outdated. Is it really losing its market and use, and we are not really going to have anything out? I beg to differ. Actually, no, it is one of the best fibers we have. Rather, I will say it is the best fiber we have in textile. So something which we have very good, how can we say that it is losing market? Rather, it cannot lose market. If it is losing market, it is because of us. So what are we know all these things. It is a fiber which is not expensive anymore. I mean, there was a time when polyester was very cheap and cotton was losing because of the cost. There may be still times, depending on supply demand situation, that cotton prices may fluctuate. So does the polyester fiber prices. But it is still not very expensive. It is really in the same bracket of cost. But the best thing is it's a very versatile fiber. That means it can be used in making variety of fabrics and variety of applications in many ways. Best part is it is naturally breathable and it is cool to the skin. I mean, its touch is very good. If you look at polyester, they fight for this property even today. And it is soft to the skin. It's non-abrasive. It's non-allergic. It's rather called hypoallergic. It's a fairly strong fiber. Okay, not as strong as polyester, but fairly strong fiber. It can last easily a lifetime for a wearer, and it is easy to wash, easy to maintain. Very big thing, non-static, so it doesn't get spoiled so easily. Polyester gets soiled very easily, and it's very difficult to clean. This is not there with the problem with the cotton fiber, and it is insulating in nature, and it traps air because it is able to trap air if you make a yarn out of it. So what does this mean to a company? If you really look, I mean, all these properties which I said are known in the literature, so nothing new here. But if you put it to the customer has actually forgotten many of these things. If you look at cotton market, those who realize these values, they are still buying cotton. And even if it is expensive, even if it is of prime value, they will go ahead and buy it because they realize those values. But marketing is such a thing, and putting it in a manner is such a thing that people have forgotten cotton and they have moved on to other material just because of the market pitch. But all these things which are good points are there with cotton, and we have to reinvent it in a manner that it becomes useful for people. So one of the most important things is sustainable material. It is the most sustainable material. If viscose can be thought of sustainable, cotton definitely is more sustainable. It's a natural resource. It's a recyclable resource. It is non-toxic, easy to dispose. There is no problem from that end. There are other sustainable issues. I'll come to them later. But many companies just using natural materials make it sustainable. And cotton really falls into it very easily. And on top of it, it's very easy to manufacture. You can make textiles, dye it, process it, print it, finish it very easily in bright colors without any problem. So it's easy to make. Other fibers are much more challenging. If you look at the benefits to the customers, as I said, you can say it is soft and breathable. It's comfortable to wear. It's better night sleep. So people spend a lot of money if they want a better night's sleep. I mean, people sell mattresses and bed sheets and bed covers and night wears and all kinds of things just to make sleep better. And cotton naturally gives you a comfortable sleep, a comfortable night out. It's also a very safe fiber to wear. It's hypoallergic, as I told you. On top of it, it is non-electrostatic, so it doesn't cling, which is a problem with a lot of synthetic fibers and especially polyester fiber. And then it is quite safe if you wear it near a heat source, which is you're cooking something, and polyesters are not meant to be brought near to they can actually make burns on your skin if you come very close. So though it is flammable, but it is non-melting, which means it is safe till it catches fire. So there is a safety inbuilt in this fiber. And if you look at the value to the customer, as I said, very easy to wash, very easy to keep, easy care material. It has odor resistance or automatic odor resistance. It doesn't get to have a foul smell very easily, while polyester synthetic fibers can easily become bacteria prone and fouling. You can just wear, you can actually keep on wearing because of that, and wash less if you like jeans, etc. You don't really have to wash them too many times. If you look at pill problem, again, compared to polyester, cotton has very minimal pill problem. So these are the major advantages of cotton, and we need to now market these points one by one to the people in a manner so that it becomes a real customer value, and people start to see the share of cotton, how it can go. But share of cotton is still going down. Why? Because other companies and other fibers are actually pitching against it and trying to really market its negative points to show their positive points. So they don't talk about the positive points of cotton, but they talk about the negative points of cotton. And let's see what those cotton negative points are. So from sustainability, I said it's a sustainable fiber, but then there are some issues, and these issues are often given a lot of sound. One is using insecticides, pesticides, water consumption, energy consumption in growing cotton, which is true. So we need to look at issues, how we can reduce insecticides and pesticides. We need to look at how water can be used less or energy can be used less in what we call green cotton or a bio cotton or cottons of better variety. So this is something which is not in our hands, but yes, as a nation or as a cotton producer, we must look at issues so that environmental issues can, which are related to cotton are minimized, so people don't make that kind of a noise about it. If you look at social issues, yes, again, it's a industry where agriculture is part of it. So labor becomes an issue, working conditions become an issue, and people are not paid well at times, and working conditions are hard. So we need to work on those aspects so that people are not able to raise fingers on cotton, that cotton is not a good fiber to use because it is an environmental hazard or a socially unacceptable way of making it. If we look at the technological challenges, then one of the I've listed some of the most important technological challenges in cotton, which one is the shrinkage. So this is something which industry can easily target, and sometimes we lose the value of cotton in the eyes of customer because many brands don't care about it, or many other non-brand items, they don't care about high fiber shrinks at the consumer end. That really puts off a person who buys a fit and then after washing the material does not really fit at all. So we can really make cotton quite shrink proof. It's not that other fibers do not shrink, but cotton somehow, because during the manufacturing cycle it shrinks more, we try to take an advantage by stretching it. So we need to let go such things which are going to put customer off. We have to make sure that the customer is happy buying a cotton because the cotton will fit as it is bought from the market. Another important thing, while technology is very easily available for making wash fast colors, light fast colors in cotton, people put colors which bleed, continuously bleed, wash after wash, keeps on fading with the light, and makes a short user life. So people don't want to buy things, a very good thing, and then throw them away in just 1 or 2 or 3 washes because they have faded, the light has, the color has gone off for a light, or it has faded with time. So, and that is one of the reasons why polyester is gaining market, because it remains fresh and as it is good for a long time, and people like that. In some countries where weather is not such a big issue, we need to remove this problem of fastness, shrinkage from cotton, so that people, when they buy cotton, which is a natural fiber, sustainable fiber, comfortable fiber, it also serves them for a long time when they buy it. The other major issue which comes against cotton is slow drying. So we must look at technologies to somehow, if we are going for sports kind of t-shirts and trousers and other kind of materials, then we have to look at, or active wear, we have to look at drying times. And we can create finishes for cotton which will make cotton easy to dry or less able to hold moisture for a long time. So such things, we need even innovations to really target some of these things. Similarly, crease, another thing, it can't be, we say crease resistant fabrics are available, but then they use all kinds of chemicals, which may not be very good for environment and for user. So we have to look at technologies of making it crease resistant. And the last point, which is most important, is cotton is not seen as a fashion fabric by many. One of the reasons polyester has grown so big is because of fashion industry. They want shimmery material. That is why viscose is also going up, because it's a shiny material, and translucent material things can be made out of it, and it can create lots of fashion statements. You have to really start thinking about how cotton can be made to look more fashionable. And it's not that it cannot be done, people have done it. There are methods and technologies, and one has to look at how one can make even very fine cottons or translucent cottons, or try to mix it with other materials to make it more a fashion statement, so that they become more shiny, more body hugging, and trying to create shapes with the user. So what is needed is a new thinking, creating a special space, and that will come from 5 points I've written here. Foremost is the innovation. I have told you some of the positive points, which are very, very strong positive points about cotton, which no other fiber has. And I have told you about some negative points, which are because of bad practices in industry. We need to really look at innovations to solve those problems. Some special effects which we can create, some uniqueness which we can create, whether we can make them very good shrink resistant materials, or very durable, fast materials, which are safe to wear and have other additional properties. I will come to some of those properties. Second, we make it more sustainable environmentally. And third, we need to look at that we are socially responsible industry. We look after our workers, we look after our farmers, and we try to create products which are socially acceptable practices in the industry. And all these things, if we say it is innovative, we have done something new, it's a new kind of a cotton, it's a new property, it is a sustainable material, it's a social, we are observing all social responsibility, then one should be able to verify these claims. One should be able to say, yes, you have done this. It's not that you are just claiming it as an advertisement and actually person is getting the same material as any other company is giving, then you will not get the value out of it. So you need to find ways of making those claims verifiable. A customer should be able to say, yes, I bought an original, authentic material. And based on that, then you have to create a brand out of it, so that you are segregated as a cotton producer of a high value from any other cotton producer or cotton textile manufacturer who has not done any of these things. So when we talk about innovation, let's talk about then each point one at a time. First is innovation. So when we talk about innovation, we are talking about novel finishes to mitigate, lessen the technological challenges, which are shrink proofing, wash and light fast processing, coating and lamination on textiles, giving antiviral or antimicrobial finishes, depending on the time. Now the time for antiviral and antimicrobial more than ever. Water repellency, moisture management, and anti-crease effects. So these words are not new words. These are all old words, but one should not just keep on using technologies which were used 10 years back or 20 years back, because people have not found value out of it. You have to, as I gave you some of the case studies, you have to create some kind of a niche, one property which is very unique, and you have found a new way of doing it, a new technology of doing it, which is safer, which is more effective to the. And next very important point in innovation is the fashion. You have to bring, we have to make a balance between the fashion and the innovation which you brought, so that your material is now a fashion material which people can use to design fashion clothing. When we talk about sustainability or social responsibility, was one of the most important thing, as I said, is when we are using finishes, we have to not use harmful chemicals anymore. So we have to remove traditional chemicals and actually bring in innovative new chemicals which are being supplied by companies or getting researched by new companies, And you can also evolve chemicals if you are capable of making such materials in your factory, so that you can put certain things which are not been in the market earlier. You can also start using other natural materials for those finishes, for those laminations or coatings along with cotton, so it becomes all natural kind of a material. And then avoid social exploitation, as I said, and somehow there are certifications, a lot of them now, which you can really work upon and work in, and then create a balance between fashion and sustainability. The next, once we have done innovation, we are sustainable. I said you have to have some kind of a reliability or a method to track or say that yes, what you have done is right. So that comes into quality and reliability. And there you have to work for international certifications, which are recognized everywhere. So if you're making antiviral fabric, it should be actually certified internationally that yes, it is. If it is antimicrobial, it should be certified. If it is safe to be used for certain kind of applications, it should be certified for that. So international certifications for all kinds of sustainable manufacturing which you have done, whether you are following practices which are more beneficial to the environment, less impact on the environment, for example. There are certifications which you could go for to prove that your manufacturing practices are good. And you have to show that your effects are durable. With washings, they remain effective, they don't harm the environment. To do all this, you can have not only certification, you can also put some tracer marks. One of the things which I have seen in the market is now polyester is being pushed as cotton, because they can put very good finishes initially, which wash off eventually. It feels like cotton, it looks like cotton, but actually it's not cotton. So they're counterfeiting cotton and killing your market. So you need to find ways of counterfeiting, so that natural cotton made using right ingredients are shown to the people. So you can put tracer markers. There are companies which do that, and you can create your own markers also, so that confidence is built in the customers, and customers are able to look at your product in a different manner altogether. And then comes obviously the branding. Once you've done all this, you don't want people to get confused. They should be able to look for your name and buy with peace of mind that this company is an environmental conscious company, it's a social responsible company. It cares for the customer because it gives a value, it gives finishes, it gives treatments which are good for the customer, and it's value driven, and it gives a verifiable change. So you have to build that. You have to work for all these 4-5 things, so that you not only in India, you can then export worldwide using that name. One of the last slides I'm going to use now is a case study, a company in Australia which is called Cotton On Group. They have actually created a whole a host of companies. One is Cotton On Kids, for kids fashion wear, Cotton On Body, which is intimate wear, sleep wear, and lifestyle wear, Factory, which is for youth fashion, Supri, which is keeping in mind the modern girl, the 21st century working girl fashion, and then Ruby, which is footwear and sorry for the spelling, and accessories, etc. And then Typo, which is your tech wear. In an office, the decor, on the desk, what can be there, on the walls, what can be there, and things like that. So there's a Typo. And they have tried to create huge range of materials, and they have thousands of stores worldwide selling these kind of things. So one can actually create, and there are many other such case studies. One of I don't remember now the name, but one group of young people, they have started a startup where they have started putting water repellent cotton shirts and stain resistant materials, and they're just selling it on web, and they are really growing very fast. So such kind of companies can be created, such kinds of product lines can be created, but definitely you have to put some innovation somewhere, and you have to prove and show that innovation works. So with this, I would like to stop here and answer and take any questions if they are there. We do some kind of work in this area of making functional materials and finishes. If you need to learn about us, you can go to smita-itd.com site and learn about our work from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much. It was an interesting presentation. and especially interesting case studies. So the four buzzwords: innovation, natural, which is like almost a buzzword among the millennials today, if I may say so. And of course, social responsibility, which carefully looked into it, because I had a pleasure of like going and visiting many of these clusters across the country. I can only one thing which I can vouch for is like the way they take care of the people, the environment or the social causes. So, and last but not the least, branding, and of course, how technology is we have requested all the participants to post their questions in the in the chat box. So at the end of the third speaker, we will take all the questions together, and I request all the participants to post their questions so that I can please mention to whom these questions are meant to. That will be easy for us to take it. I hope that format sounds okay for you.
Sure,
We
sure.
will wait for the questions, and then like we'll go towards that. So before I call upon the next speaker, Professor, I have two questions, if I may ask you. You know, I mean, in your presentation, you detailed about the future of textiles in fabrics that do something. But if we're like, especially MSMEs, the MSMEs plan their business and strategy around functional finish and fibers, do you see the scope available for them?
Yes, very much. Rather, MSMEs are probably rightly placed to put anything new, which is a bit of a risky proposition to begin with, which that means cannot be put in very large scales. So SMEs are the right size to really look at new finishes, create markets for them, and actually push it. So rather, not only MSMEs, I think just startups which do not really fall in any category. They started doing very well when they hold on to a new idea and a new concept and they build upon it. So yes, I think they can.
That's a great news. So you also said the future of textiles is in doing that things differently, adding and creating new value adds for foreign customers. But do you feel the global demand for sustainable solutions can be achieved in the current Indian environment and settings?
So yes, again, this can be divided in two parts because textile industry has to rely on materials from agriculture. So sustainability comes both from agricultural front and from the industrial front. So yes, bringing both the parties together is a little challenge in our country, but definitely industry can start to do its part and probably work with growers to give cotton which is more bio cotton, or we say organic cotton, and then work into sustainability, because people in India have now started working on organic supplies and working with smaller groups to create or grow such kind of materials for them. So I think it should be possible for cotton as well.
Okay, that's a great news. Thank you, Professor. Thank you once again. Next speaker, Professor Ashim Tiwari. So, sir, the stage is yours.
Okay, so I essentially wanted to talk about Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, taking, I would say, a different turn from what Professor Agarwal had been talking so far about, more specifically on the cotton aspects. So I'm talking of the real big thing which is happening in the industry today, which is coming of artificial intelligence. So before I really get into artificial intelligence, I just wanted to quickly touch upon one other thing, which is technical textile. I have a very large activity happening in the area of composites and technical textile, primarily composites, woven fabrics, and things like that. Okay, so this is all what I'm going to talk about, the composites in my talk. If anyone is interested, they can of course contact me. I very closely work with a lot of colleagues of mine, and this is the cyber physical systems and data analytics group which we have, which has people from various departments, but primarily from mechanical engineering, and a lot of students and researchers, and a lot of industry collaborators. So for instance, Rohan Patodia also is a very close collaborator in many of my activities. So we have a very vibrant group which is working on various activities primarily related to cyber physical systems and data analytics. So I want to quickly jump onto and tell as to what really is artificial intelligence. Now, I think this is something which we all have been hearing for a while, but as a matter of fact, artificial intelligence has started more than 50 to 60 years back. So the word has been coined way back in 1950s. So it's nothing new in terms of the word artificial intelligence. but it has only gained prominence in the last 10 years. So artificial intelligence is basically a much bigger area, which started in 1950s. The word was coined in 1950s, and machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. And what I really would like to talk about is how AI is changing the industry. So machine learning becomes a subset which essentially has an idea that all the information is contained in the data. And if you have the data, you could use that to learn patterns. Now, artificial intelligence in general is an ability of a machine to imitate human behavior, whereas machine learning is a much smaller subset of that, which is looking at identifying patterns and making decisions or predicting without human intervention. Next slide. So now in machine learning, you could talk about basic three categories. One is a supervised learning, the other is unsupervised learning, and the third is the reinforcement learning. We would not really be talking a lot about reinforcement learning, but examples of supervised and unsupervised learning are very common in industry. So supervised learning is where you actually know what the outcomes would be, and thus your training of the machine learning algorithms is based on a known fact, which is the outcomes, and thus you supervise the training, and that is known as supervised learning. Primarily, regression and classifications are a part of supervised learning. On the other hand, unsupervised learning is an area where you really do not know what the outcome is. You do not know the answers, but you have a lot of data. And that's when you start looking at data clustering, change point detections, and dimensionality reduction. For instance, if you have seen something in the past, you can train your model from that past data, then that is supervised learning. However, if you would like to have your machine learning model look at some future instance which has never been seen in the past, then you would like to have it work on unsupervised learning, where it actually sees something new and figures it out, but has not been trained in the past. Next slide, please. So machine learning essentially started by what we now know, we call as classical machine learning. So this is essentially something which started in the 80s and 90s. And this was based on a lot of different theories, information-based theories, similarity-based theories, probability-based learning, and error-based learning. We also started having expert system-based learning. However, these classical machine learning techniques have a limitation to themselves. Beyond a certain limit, they cannot improve their performance. So no matter how much you train these classical machine learning models, they cannot perform better after a while. And this is something like inherent nature of these classical machine learning algorithms. For instance, you could not train you can teach your dog, for instance, a lot of tricks, but beyond the limit, no matter how much you train it, it cannot do complex mathematics, for instance. So that is where you see the graph on the right, that the conventional or classical machine learning kind of plateaued down. However, about 10 years back, there was a resurgence in the machine learning community, and something known as deep learning started. And deep learning changed the entire, I would say, playing field. And deep learning became something which could surpass the performance of conventional machine learning and the classical machine learning and go far beyond. However, it was, of course, data hungry. So the more data you give it, the better the performance would become. And deep learning became so good that it could actually beat humans. So today we are living in a world where deep learning is able to perform tasks better than humans in many specific areas. And the two things which are very commonly looked at in deep learning are convolutional neural networks and recurrent neural networks. These are the two deep learning techniques. Next slide, please. So now, if you look at the artificial intelligence evolution, we started with AI about 50, 60 years back, as I said. And that was something where you had simple regressions, or you had very definite cost functions, and you were developing the models. So it was a rule-based approach where the persons used to develop a rule and you used to program it in the machines. All your CNC machines are essentially the first artificial intelligence machines in some sense, because they have a rule which we have derived. However, if we do not know a rule, but we do know that what is right and what is wrong, then we can perform that using the current deep learning techniques, which now we call as the artificial narrow intelligence, ANI. And currently we are living in the area when, or the time when we are in the second wave of intelligence, which is known as artificial narrow intelligence. Here we do not need to know the rules. We just need to know what is right and what is wrong, and the machine will figure out rules. A very classical example of this is that if you see a cat or a dog, you can very easily figure out which is a cat, which is a dog. But you cannot really come up with rules because there are millions of different kinds of cats, there are hundreds of different kinds of dogs. And how would you be able to come up with a rule which you can teach the machine? So you do not know a rule, but you do know the answer. So if you know the answer, you let the machine figure out the rule. And that is really the biggest, I would say, change which has happened in the last 10 years. It has primarily been driven by hardwares, computational hardwares, which could perform very complex, deep network simulations and calculations. Next slide, please. So just to tell you what really is the current possibilities, I would very easily say that the current possibilities of deep learning are almost as good as human in almost majority of cases which we do on a daily basis. So any task which human does, deep learning can do that specific task better than us, almost any. And the almost is of course the catchword. So there are few tasks which it cannot. So this is just an example of Google deep learning retinopathy. So they trained the deep learning networks to identify the patient conditions based on retina image. And they could predict the age, they could predict the gender, they could predict the blood pressure, they could predict whether the person was diabetic or not, and they could also predict the body mass index of a person just by looking at the retina. Now, this is the kind of information which your doctor will not be able to decipher by looking at your retina. However, the deep learning network was able to do that. So I'm just trying to give you some examples. Next slide, please. This is another example of how deep learning, can you click next again? Yeah. So this is, sorry, okay, please go back. I think the animation is not working. That's okay. So this is a deep learning network which has been trained to read lips. So it can do lip reading. So for instance, if you see someone, but you have the person muted in the television, your deep learning algorithms can look at it and predict what the person is speaking. And now these libraries are openly available. People can actually use them, and they can further retrain them for different languages. So you can train it for your local language, or you could train it for a specific dialect and things like that. And this is something which is not really possible for every human to do. Next slide, please. Not just reading your lips, but you could actually also have the person read your mind. And deep learning can be used to decipher images which are there in your mind. This is just to give an example. So the image on the left, top left, is that of a tiger, and the bottom image is what the computer reconstructed by looking at an MRI of the brain. So the deep learning network could figure out what you are seeing without really looking at what you're seeing. So it could just read your brain. So not only can it read your lip, it can read your brain. So if you see the washing machine or the fly, which the person is looking, and the computer is able to generate based on the MRI of your brain as to what you are seeing. So now deep learning has become extremely potent beyond what many of the human skills are. Next slide, please. Just to give you a more practical example of this, self-driving cars. Now this is something which is a reality. Millions of kilometers have been done by the Google self-driving car, and they are very, very safe. As a matter of fact, they are at least 10 times safer than human drivers or more. And with time, they are improving. So this is something which is already happening. It has been happening for several years. You can order a pizza and it can be delivered to you by a self-driven car in the US. Next slide, please. See that the possibilities are immense. A unique aspect where we were looking at solving differential equations, and a researcher recently published that you can solve very complex mathematical problems without really understanding anything about the mathematics. So this deep learning network has no understanding of mathematics. It just learns from the symbols, and it finally figures out what the answers are, and it is able to beat Mathematica, Maple, and MATLAB, which are the benchmarks for the mathematical community. So this is just to show that the deep learning is a brute force method which does not need to understand the domain knowledge, but can, in a sense, learn what the answers will be. Next slide, please. And this is really becoming like an explosion because things are happening in all possible fields. And this is just to tell you a small glimpse. So for instance, the AlphaGo The world champion of the Go board game was beaten by AlphaGo. Google AlphaGo could beat it. Now we have AlphaGo Zero, which is far more potent than AlphaGo, which was the original one made by the Google. Artificial intelligence can also do a lot of very unique things. For instance, they can write poetry, they can create music, they can create paintings. As a matter of fact, one of the novels in Japan was almost about to win a literary award, which was written by AI. Facebook regularly uses for kids short stories written by AIs. However, with all of these realistic looking aspects of AI also is not, completely away from human in its behavior, and is prone to the same problems which humans are. So for instance, the Atari playing AI wanted to win so badly that it started cheating. So AI has a very strange side to it as well. Next slide, please. So all what I'm trying to say is that artificial intelligence has become extremely powerful in narrow areas. It's not really yet in a generalized area, but narrow areas it can. So I'm just going to give you some examples of what research we are doing and how it can be used in the context of textile industry. So we are, for instance, doing a lot of video analytics and video research in which we could look at videos, identify faces, unique people can be identified, their gender, their age, their dress, colors, and other things can be identified just by looking at the videos. And this can be done completely by an artificial intelligence agent. No human intervention is required. Now, this can be used, for instance, on a shop floor. So you can ID a shop floor worker. You could look at if there is a hazardous situation, if someone is working on a shop floor and something happens where you need to intervene. You could also have work protocol conformity assessment. So you can see if the person is actually following the basic rules, is always wearing PPE, for instance. Now, for instance, this is a very big thing. All these aspects can be done, and this all can be done without any human in the loop. Artificial intelligence can completely look at this. Cycle time and efficiency determination, and I'll talk about one of the examples in which we tried this in the garment factory. And loss time assessment. Next slide, please. For instance, pose estimation is a very, very powerful thing where you can actually real time see the pose of people or see the motion direction. And this could be something which could be used to capture best practices in a shop floor. So if you see that these are best practices, AI can automatically figure out what would be the best practices and what would not be the best practices. Next slide, please. We have, of course, also used the artificial intelligence and deep networks for oncological aspects, so not just for shop floor and pose identification, but you could also look at carcinomas and predict if the slides, in this specific case, we are looking at a CT specimen, we can predict if the CT specimen has cancer in it or not. And the bottom right image is the predicted label, and whereas the bottom middle image is the one which has been looked at by an oncologist, and we are able to very precisely predict by just looking at the CT images of MRI. Next, please. So going forward, we have developed a series of IoT devices. Now, where does IoT fit in all of this? Now, IoT is Internet of Things, and Internet of Things is essentially a small microcontroller device which has sensors and capability to communicate over the network. Now, this is something which really is the heart of artificial intelligence. The reason is that artificial intelligence works on data. So you need to feed data to AI models. But how do you create data at a shop floor? You create data by creating data through these IoT devices. So what you see on the bottom left is an IoT device developed by us, and we have many different kinds of IoT devices which have been developed. This is a specific case. We look at current, voltage, and accelerometer data, and it is sent real time, and the graphs on the bottom right are showing some of the graphs of that. And the actual machine is shown on the left side, which is a 3-axis CNC machine. And we have created a virtual cyber twin of this machine, which is essentially an incarnation of this machine in the cyberspace, which has all the real-time data which is actually present on the machine available to you in the cyberspace. So essentially, you can think about a second life of this machine living in the cyberspace, which is having all the real-time data and is augmented by artificial intelligence. Next slide, please, to understand what is happening. I'll very quickly go over some of the other case studies. This is a very detailed set of tools which we have developed, which we call as the machine monitoring and analytics for total productivity and maintenance. So this is a set of tools which we have developed, where we can install the IoT devices on machines, and they could look at plant operation efficiency, they could look at quality and predict monitor, and they can predict quality, they can look at equipment condition monitoring, tool wear, and many other aspects associated with this. Next slide, please. And this is just to show you, this slide is showing you how this entire structure works. We have IoT devices which are installed on the shop floor. They send the data to the cloud. The cloud has both the IoT server as the data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence machine, which does all the processing and sends the data back to either the shop floor or the plant management, and they can see what is happening. And you can figure out pie charts of what are the reasons for losses, where are the main inherent flaws, is it a management loss or is it an operational loss, what are the different aspects associated with this. This is something which we have installed in one of the aerospace companies in Bangalore on a pilot basis. Next slide, please. Now, looking at another aspect, which is a very big aspect in industries, especially in cotton industries, is the power utilization and power management. There are many activities in a textile industry which are very power intensive. For instance, drying is one of them. So fabric drying is extremely power intensive, and it's also almost not always the most efficient way of doing things. So you may actually have an inefficient way of doing it. Moreover, you have an open loop system where you essentially bone dry everything and then go ahead and do other things which may not be even required. So we have a set of IoT devices which can perform a very detailed power management for the entire plant and provide you a one single window understanding of what is happening, and you could optimize your utilizations. It also looks at power anomalies like voltage spike, current spike, sine wave, and other aspects. Next slide, please. So another very useful device which we have come up with, which we call as ASISMO, this is a staff productivity measurement tool which can be installed in an IT kind of a setup, where you may be having people sitting in the desk and on computers and developing things. And this monitors as to how is the utilization of assets happening, are the licenses of the softwares being properly used, are people spending too much time on Facebook and other aspects rather than actually working. And this is all in a very small device which just goes on the computer, and it can provide all of that information. Next slide, please. So now, this is one other activity which we had come up with, and one of my colleagues actually had derived, which was to come up with a decision-making system for maintenance. So selective maintenance based on, and this was done for the Indian Army, where they were looking at their tanks and the utilization of the tank, and depending upon the scenario, whether it's a peacetime scenario, a war exercise, a war-like scenario 1 or a war-like scenario 2, based on that, you would have to keep your maintenance scheduled such that you are able to provide the reliability to a mission whichever you may want to take. A very elaborate process. Don't want to go into the details of this, but just to tell you that this was something which was developed for the Indian Army. Next slide, please. A somewhat similar thing was done for the Indian Navy, which was more on the equipments which are on board on a ship. And this was essentially a project which was taken up. It just got finished a while back, where we were able to provide reliability and choices to the captain when they are going for a specific mission. Next slide, please. Another few specific things. So there's a lot of mathematics which is involved at the back of it, which can perform all of this. So for instance, this is to show that you can do condition monitoring, tool condition monitoring by continuous data. So you could predict real-time tool wear, and you could predict an imminent failure in advance, and thus save a lot of time. And this is something now which is very commonly done and is possible, and we have developed several such techniques. Next slide, please. A very unique experiment which we did, and this is from an example from that, where we were looking at a continuous casting in a steel manufacturing facility. And in that continuous caster, there is a thing known as breakpoint, where the continuous caster develops a small break and the liquid metal flows out. And this is a very, very dangerous situation, because the liquid metal is at 1500 degrees centigrade. It spills all over the caster. It stops the entire machine, and it's almost half a day to a day exercise to bring it back. Needless to say, a lot of losses. And thus we came up with a machine learning artificial intelligence program which could predict this. However, the challenge was that this had to be predicted in a matter of milliseconds. So actually the answer had to be brought out in less than 250 milliseconds, because if we are delayed by more than that, then it would not be possible for the system to stop and take a corrective action. And we were able to develop this process and this algorithm and give it to them. What I'm trying to say is that there's a very large possible range of activities where it could be used. Next slide, please. So looking at where artificial intelligence is currently being used. So traditionally, information technology and marketing has been the two biggest users of AI. So if you go online, you go to and Google something, the next time when you are on Facebook, on Amazon or something, it will show you products which you had Googled on. That's marketing. And that is again very closely related to information technology. So IT and marketing has been the two biggest users. Now finance and accounting is also taking up, and customer service is also coming and started using artificial intelligence. Next slide, please. However, there is a very big possibility of industries which are into manufacturing using artificial intelligence. However, they would be requiring IoT, Internet of Things, to be able to do that. And this is a slide which I have again borrowed. This shows what are the various aspects and benefits of using an Internet of Things or industrial Internet of Things in industries. And this just shows that improvement of operational efficiency, improvement of productivity, create business opportunities, and reducing downtime and things like that are one of the basic reasons which people attribute, and that's why they want to go into IoT. Next slide, please. So this was the prediction. Of course, the prediction has now gone haywire, and these are some of the predictions by Morgan Stanley and other companies as to how the IoT business and IoT market size will increase in 2020 and 21. Of course, they never knew that we would be having Corona, and this may be something which could be disrupted. However, having said that, as a matter of fact, this may actually be surpassed. Because of Corona, there has been less accessibility of machines, and we have been more dependent upon connected devices. And I think that is really a very unique opportunity, because IoT may then become the tool to go to, or the go-to tool, basically. Next slide, please. So now I kind of gave you a sum of what really artificial intelligence is. I can talk more about it, but I have limited time. I gave you what IoT is and why IoT is needed. So IoT is needed to feed in data to AI. However, the key aspect is that it's well and good. You can do a lot of things with AI, but how will it generate value to me? How can you monetize IoT and AI in textile industry? And this is a very nice, graph which has been created by McKinsey, which in a sense summarizes all the values which can be created, how the monetization of IoT and AI in textile industry could be. So if you start looking at, and I'll start from the resource process, you could have an intelligent IoT which can do a real-time optimization of your process. So your process can be controlled real-time and thus be more efficient. Smart energy consumption, as I just talked about, especially the dryers in textile industries, we are working very closely with Rohan and others on aspects of looking at how dryers can be more smart, so you can decrease the energy consumption. Asset utilization is another very big area. The aspect is that asset utilization, one does not really attribute, but has the largest potential of cost savings and monetization. So for instance, downtime of a machine. If you think about machine maintenance, you have essentially three ways of maintaining a machine. One is a machine maintenance when there is a failure. Now, we had a case study in which we went to a garment factory, and the people in an entire line, about 40 people were stitching things together. And in that case, if there is ever a machine failure, a stitching machine fails, you have a phenomenal loss, because that really loss gets percolated down the line, because if this person gets delayed, the other person gets delayed. And almost on a running basis, there are failures almost every single day in one or the other line. So machine failures could be very, very expensive. Now, this could be in a small scenario like where you have a small stitching machine which is failing, but it could also happen in very large machineries. Imagine if there's a large machinery where a component fails, and if that component failure leads to cascading effect of failure of other components, it can become a really very expensive thing. So machine maintenance is, I think, one of the biggest aspects which could be used for monetization of IoT and AI. So you could perform maintenance once the things fail, but as I just said, that it's very expensive to do that. The other possibility which machineries can be used is to basically have a regular periodic maintenance. Now, periodic maintenance is always going to be more aggressive than what is required. Why? Because you don't want a failure. So thus you will be doing maintenance more often than required, and thus you'll be over maintaining your machine, and that again will lead to over cost. And thus, predictive maintenance is one aspect which becomes artificial intelligence can do predictive maintenance. So your machine knows when it's going to fail, and it can, in 3 days from now, I might fail. And this is something which can really be directly translated into monetization. It can be directly translated into value to the industry. Another aspect is labor. Now, the entire aspect of IoT and AI is not to create automation. I'm not asking for automation, but I'm trying to empower the labor, because automation replaces the labor. But if we have IoT and AI, that can empower the labor. So the labor can be far more productive. They will be better aware of what to do. They will be able to conform to specific ways of doing things. They can improve. An excellent example of this is cricket. If you look at a cricket, you don't want to automate a cricket. You want Sachin Tendulkar and Virat Kohli to bat. However, artificial intelligence and AI can be used to tell as to what would be the best way to handle a specific ball, or what would be the best technique. And these are aspects where we can actually empower. This is where I very strongly feel that we are different from Germany and Europe specifically, where there is a labor shortage, and they are trying to go with IoT and AI along with automation. And that automation is essentially to replace human requirement. In India, on the other hand, I think humans are a huge asset, and we can use IoT and AI to complement them, and that can create a unique value. So India has, in a sense, a very unique opportunity in this area. Of course, investors, quality, time to market, supply, demand, and service, all of these aspects basically can be augmented by IoT. So in a nutshell, if I say that the way the value and monetization can happen in a textile industry is to make things cheaper, to make things better in quality, and to make them faster. And all of these three things can be done by artificial intelligence using IoT. So now I'm going to my last slide. Next slide, please. So now I will summarize that artificial intelligence, as I said, can provide a very decisive advantage to a business. And moving forward, that would be something which we have to take advantage of. And artificial intelligence is hungry for data, and IoT will be the one which will generate the data and feed that data to the artificial intelligence systems. Now, there are another aspect of IoT devices where the artificial intelligence is married with the IoT device, which we call as the edge computing devices. And that is something which is gaining a lot of, but these are micro details. I don't want to go into that. Coming to the monetization as to how will you monetize AI? AI is well good, but how does it bring value? If I have to invest, let's say, a couple of lakhs of rupees, how will I be able to get return on investment, and how will it bring value to me? And that's where I go back to my three phrases: cheaper, better, and faster. And that can only be achieved once you have an understanding of the domain knowledge. So a generalized AI cannot be used. A person or an industry working in general artificial intelligence cannot do this unless they have a domain knowledge. And finally, MSME, I would say, has a huge role to play in the IoT deployment. And the reason is that they are local. So if they are local, they can provide local customized solutions. And this is very, very important, because the supervised learning requires you to have a customized solution for each and every shop floor and industry. So you can't expect an MNC which has a general product. You can't just plug and play an AI. You need to train the AI, and that has to be done through supervised learning. And that's why MSMEs will play a very huge role. The other reason is that MSMEs are very, very cost effective. If you go and buy a operation, you'll end up spending very little sum of money and able to pay all value, whereas small SME able to create far more cost-effective solutions for you. And the reason is overheads and the processes, whereas they can cut all of those. And finally, the technology. The world of AI is changing by the day, literally by the day. My presentation day before yesterday is different from today and will be different tomorrow. And this is only possible with MSMEs who are very agile. They can bring in technology on a daily basis, whereas large corporations have huge processes. A new technology comes, it will take a very long time for them to incorporate that. So this is my overall summary of artificial intelligence and IoT in textile and in general manufacturing industry. Back to you, Mr. Narasimhan.
Thank you, Professor Hashim. Thank you so much for taking us through for a detailed presentation. on using, Professor Asim, if I may ask you a presentation detailed on using AIT to reduce cost and improve efficiency. While we talked about improving consistently in production, reducing defects and identifying areas of improvement, do you feel we have training infrastructure and available to make our managers smart managers? How, in your opinion, institutions like IIT can help the MSMEs?
That's a very important aspect actually, because at the end of the day, AI will be as good as the managers understand it actually. And this is one area which I would say that we are not really doing very well. However, there has been in the last 3-4 years, there has been a lot of progress. So for instance, in IIT Bombay and many other IITs, we have several courses which are happening. We do a lot of webinars on aspects of AI and usage of AI, but there is far more room actually. So there is a specific master's program which IIT Bombay, for instance, is starting in in aspects of Industry 4.0. And there are many such small short courses also which are being planned by IIT Bombay and other IITs. But I think that is a very important aspect. And industry has to work very closely with academia in this specific aspect to reskill, to understand what are the opportunities. So the managers need to know not the micro details, but they need to have an understanding of what all is possible and what are the limitations. So that is very true. A lot is happening, but a lot needs to be done.
Oh, great. That's an interesting note. But we also understand that in the corona situation or the new normal expedite that need to conduct business over digital firms. But do you feel being automated and efficient will help MSMEs, like, plug and play into global supply chain? Or do you see more acceptance coming from global brands?
So actually, this is very unique. In some sense, people are saying that the corona pandemic has created an opportunity. And I would put it the other way around. I'll say that it has actually forced us to think at things which we were not doing fast enough. And in some sense, we will leapfrog what others. So if you look at Europe and US and other advanced nations, they have a very large, expensive infrastructure which they have used for aspects associated with IoT and online infrastructure for their industry. However, in our case, we don't have such a huge infrastructure. But because of this pandemic, we are being forced, and that is actually leading to low bandwidth, cheaper, and that way we will essentially some sense leapfrog others did by expensive lines we mix with very 3G and 4G networks. And thus there is in a sense, I would say, a opportunity, or at least like a room where we will be using this more often. So in some sense, yes, this pandemic has accelerated the process which otherwise was taking slow, and that acceleration has further led to some kind of a leapfrog, which is also what we saw in for instance, the cellular industry, where the telephone landlines were very slow, but the cell phone industry suddenly took over, and we never really had an entire coverage of the nation with the landlines, but we suddenly had a coverage with the cell phone. So I think that same kind of situation, but that window is very small. We have to very closely work together, industry, academia, and government has a very huge role to play in all of this, basically.
Great. So the buzzword is collaboration. Thank you so much. Okay, so before I call upon the next speaker, I once again request all the participants to use our dashboard, chatbot to post the questions, and please mention to whom the questions are addressed, and please mention your name also, from which company you are representing. And the third speaker for the evening, and Mr. Rohan Patodia. I'm sure many of you you know about him. So, but you can just take a minute. Mr. Patodia is a co-founder of Dozy Materials Mumbai, the technical textile divisions of Patodia Group, which has been in textile trade for over 8 decades. He has a family background and a deep understanding of technical textiles. His experience in finance in domestic and global settings brings the network and sales capability with him. He has been heading at Dozy Materials. He has been heading product sourcing and innovation, and helps create technical tie-ups with local as well as foreign partners. He has been instrumental in deploying IoT solutions for utility management at his Indian textile factory. Over to Mr. Patodia.
Thank you. So just going to start by saying thank you to TEXPROCIL and the Business Standard for putting this webinar together. And thank you to Asim as well as Mr. Ashwini Agarwal for taking their valuable time and sharing their thoughts with us about the industry. So just jumping right into it, a lot of stuff has already been covered by Mr. Asim Tiwari and Mr. Ashwini Agarwal, but just kind of summarizing, from an industry standpoint, what I've also learned and what I've seen. Right. So one is by using IoT and AI at the shop floor level, you're able to create, you're able to identify where problems actually occur, right? Which is in industry really important, because once you nail down on what exactly the problem is or the bottleneck is, you can solve that problem and then move forward. Right, so it creates a lot of accountability, and it also makes your managers much smarter. So if you are a manager, or if you are the management, senior management of the company, you can track on a day-to-day and a minute-to-minute level as to what is exactly going on in the factory. Right, so this allows you also to have complete transparency on what is going on. So it is like a counter check for you to see whether what your manager is saying is true or not. Right. Second is efficiency increase, right? So reducing of errors. A lot of the work that we do in most industries, which are commodity based, are the repetitive tasks, right? So we don't have to really use our brains each time to be able to create something new. We have to be smart, effective, efficient, and fast, right? So AI can help you reduce that, as as Asim has pointed out multiple times during his presentation. Even errors can be reduced in specifically the textile segment, whether it is spinning, weaving, knitting, dyeing, processing, garmenting. They're all solvable issues which AI can help solve, right? The third is cost saving, right? So once you know exactly which machines are taking a maximum amount of your power, right, or which operator is not correctly utilizing the machine, you can work with that operator, right, to help reduce the cost, or to explain to him exactly what the issues are and how he should be solving those problems, right? So that bottleneck then gets opened up, and you're allowed to save further costs, right? So this will also help increase your productivity. This kind of ties into the predictive maintenance that Asim spoke about, because now you can plan your downtime, right? So it's not a reactive situation anymore, it's a proactive situation, right? You can plan, your production team can plan exactly when downtime is going to be taken. Your engineers know exactly which machines they should be looking into, which they should be spending time fixing, right? What parts need to be gotten. So all of these things add to your bottom line, right? It increases your efficiency, your productivity, and definitely adds to your bottom line, right? The other two important points about IoT and AI is it's a tool and not a substitute, right? So you can utilize it as a tool. You can work with your managers, you can work with your employees to make them more productive, to make them smarter, but you cannot substitute them, right? Because, for example, let's say the AI tells you predictive maintenance needs to be done on X machine. The AI can't solve the machine problem, right? Nor can it solve your production issues. So it's a tool that helps your team further understand how to deal with these problems, right? The second is, there is a huge misconception or a myth, right, that this is all very expensive. It isn't. If you go to the bigger companies, yes, it is going to be expensive, but there are a number of companies in India, right, which are smart, which are dedicated to textiles and textile technology, right, which could be considered as startups, right? And they can come and help you. They can customize stuff for you. They can help you add more and more data, more and more analytical levels, and they can do a very, very good job for you. So please don't think that you have to spend, lots and lots of money to make your factory a smart factory. You do not have to spend as much money as you think. So moving on to product technology, just to jump in really briefly into the GHCL example that was given by Mr. Ashwini Agarwal. GHCL has not invested any of its own money into CapEx, right, to create this new product line. They have taken technology from one partner, which is, I think, in Germany, the other one, which is recycled PET from Reliance. They've put it together and created a third product, right, which is value addition for their retailers and their customers. Right, so they have not. You don't necessarily have to invest in technology each time or innovation each time to get a reward for it. If you have an existing infrastructure, the question should start becoming, what can we do with our existing infrastructure to increase the value addition that we can provide to our customers, right? And the best part is, being an MSME, you don't have to have a huge amount of, you don't have to have a huge capacity to be able to service these customers. They'll be happier, right, if you are a smaller player, because you don't require as much capacity to service them. And they will be much happier to work along with you for it too. So this is an interesting model that one should really think about, right? Where you can partner with companies from abroad, you can partner, or you can create your own innovations in India, put them together, package it well, as Mr. Agarwal has said, and market it to your customers abroad. The second is Arvind Mills has tied up with Hike, which is an antiviral finishes company to create antiviral clothing that they want to export overseas. So that is again an example of a foreign company coming to India, tying up with an Indian company that has mainly traditional infrastructure and traditional machines, and utilizing that for higher value added products, right? Playing on trends. This is something that I think the Indian industry should definitely take into consideration, and should be a part of everyone's strategic plan going forward. So for example, there's a company in India called Supply Compass, right? Supply Compass helps you get certified to show that you're not using child labor, you're using authentic cotton, you're using organic cotton, whatever it might be, and they help connect you to brands, or they work with you, to provide higher value added items to European and US customers. Right. So that is another partnership that one can look at, coming together, work with Supply Compass and take something like that forward. The other is, a lot of talk has come about, what can an Indian company do, right? In a new category using cotton as a raw material. So it's an Indian startup called Tumsware. Mr. Raja, I know you posted a question, so this is the name of the company, which uses specialized finishes. Their entire business model and strategic competitive advantage stands only in creating new and unique finishes, right? So they have taken on the challenge of simply making the finishes and marketing those finishes, right? They don't do anything else, right? So this is an interesting example of a company which has come in and said, we will focus on finishes. We will work with industry partners when it comes to spinning, weaving, knitting, dyeing, processing, garmenting. But some parts of this technology will be ours, right? So this is a partnership-driven model of an Indian company, right, which is done really, really well using digital channels in India, right? So the opportunities for the MSME sector. So to start with, even if if you're a little skeptical about what is going on, I would say start with an Excel sheet, right? Take an Excel sheet and note down, start listing exactly what products you're selling to which customers, to which countries, what colors, what construction of fabric, and start analyzing and seeing trends within that data itself. That will give you a much better idea about how to forecast your own demand, right? You don't have to get into very heavy or intricate data analytics. You could simply start with this to build your own understanding about what data analytics is, right? The second is working and collaborating, like Asim has also pointed out, is collaborating, working and innovating together. So for example, let's say there's a manufacturer and a trader, right? They can come together where the trader can say that I have X number of customers who are demanding these products. Why don't we come together and create a new unique technology or an innovation, or why don't we partner with a foreign company, right? And build out that product in India and then provide it to our foreign customers, right? The second could be you have a bunch of manufacturers who come together, and say that, okay, fine, 5 of us want to come together and we want to create this technology. It could be in spinning, it could be in weaving or knitting, or it could be in the final product as well, right? So you could, the other part of looking at it is you could have a spinning company, a weaving and a knitting company. You can have a dyeing and processing house, and you can have a garmenting factory that come together, right? All independent, come together, create an innovation and work on each one's strength, right? So you don't have to add additional capex. You don't have to invest hugely just by yourself. You can work with people who have different skill sets, different abilities, right? To come together and create these value adds. The last thing I'd like to talk about is the government of India also helps fund these initiatives, right? So you can do an asset-light innovation model, right? Which also happens a lot in foreign countries. So if you see anywhere in Europe or USA, universities, they come together and they come together with the industry, and the universities have all the research and development, the technical people, and the industry comes in with a problem or something that they want to solve, or an innovation that they want to create. Right. So in India, for example, we have 70% funding from the government and 30% funding from industry, which is not an upfront payment, but a staggered payment. Right. And you work with the center of excellence. It could be IIT, it could be, any of the other centers of excellence, Atira or anyone else, to create new innovations and new technologies that you think could be, something that could be interesting for market. Right. So please learn to think differently, think strategically, think bigger, because as you can see, there are different models without capex, right? Which Indian companies have taken, and they have materialized on it, and they have taken it forward, and they have created more value addition than the conventional traditional textiles that they were previously doing. So with that, I'd like to end and hand it back to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There's, in fact, very interesting three keywords. Think differently, strategically, and I like that one which you started with, tools, which is like, this is a tool to substitute. I think that is the one buzzword, like, everybody should keep it in mind. Okay, so before I move on to the Q&A session, we started getting some questions. Mr. Rogan, I have two questions, if I may take before, like, the question starts lines up. You had this experience of IoT utility implementation in an Indian factory. What were the practical difficulties faced by you in such a project? It could be like, either is it finance or lack of understanding on IoT, or using IoT post implementation. What are the challenges you faced?
So surprisingly, when I went into it, I thought, just as you did just describe, that it would be really tricky to convince management. Workers would not want it. People would be very skeptical about it. In fact, it was the opposite. People really wanted it. Engineers were really happy that we had it. Utility management was very, very happy, because what they were doing is they used to manually enter everything otherwise. So they couldn't they weren't even putting it on an Excel sheet and, analyzing it. They would simply lost data for them. They would literally just noting it down. So when we implemented it, the hardest thing to do was to change the older meters, right? Was to change the older meters, because you cannot use those to collect data. They're not built to do that. So it was just the initial capex of just changing those meters. After that, it was smooth flowing most of the way. We've luckily not even gotten calls after for servicing or anything, because you can pretty much just do it online.
That's interesting. Great. Great. Okay, so we will take questions now. We have got like couple of questions. Once again, I request the participants, to use the group chat box to pose the questions. We have two questions. One to Dr. Ashwini. One question is from Ravi, Mr. Ravi. In traditional apparel textiles, cotton spinning, where our capacity is more than demand, future competitiveness, what is the future competitiveness for cotton spinning? This is to Professor Dr. Ashwini Agarwal.
So for any product, whether it is a spun yarn or a woven fabric or any material, so we need to look at making yarns which are of a specialty type, which can bring fashion into the fabric. So definitely one can look at just if we are just spinning a performance of a normal yarn, then obviously it will become highly competitive and will not be able to sell if the demand is not there. But if you start to create fashion yarns, hybrid yarns, all kinds of materials which can be spun to create effects in the fabrics, I think it could create a niche market or a market which can grow with time. So one has to tie up, spinners have to tie up with fabric and fashion garment manufacturers to start selling them on making yarns which they require for their fabrics. And that would probably create a new demand. So it's all creating new things and then creating the entire chain of innovation and then branding it out.
If I could just add
Thank you.
on top of what Mr. Agarwal just said, is there are certain specialty yarns which are made using cotton, right? So they embed copper, they embed silver at the spinning stage, right? And it doesn't require huge capex again. So those are huge value additions that traditional mills also can look at getting into, right? Where you can extract higher value addition on the revenue or the net profit or whatever it is, but it gives you that edge in the market as well. If you Google it, you can probably figure out which are those companies that are doing it and get an idea from them.
Thanks for adding. I hope Mr. Ravi found it. Another question for Professor Ashwini. India is known for cotton textiles, but lacks in branding. I think that is the one point which you also mentioned. It is high time to think of branding cotton textiles as USA did for cotton fiber, EU for fast fashion. What Indian manufacturers to do for collective branding of cotton textile and harvesting premium price?
So collective branding is is a different idea from branding for a particular company. They're two different ball games altogether. So yes, we must talk about cotton industry as such. We need to brand it in a manner that we remove defects and color problems and shrinkage problems from most of our products. Then we can brand that, okay, it's a cotton from India. So right now we say cotton from a company, we should be able to one day say it is cotton from India, which is superior or in tackling certain kinds of properties. So if that has to be done, then like TEXPROCIL, some organization has to come forward to create those kind of a brand, and their members have to then pledge to give those kind of quality, and then a brand can be created. So yes, collective brands are a possibility, and that would definitely help the Indian companies be more competitive in the international market.
Great. Again, collaboration there comes. Okay. To Professor Asim from Mr. Ravindranathan. Can you tell about practical applications of AI in other textile manufacturing countries? To what extent is the Indian textile manufacturers adopting AI in their business? Professor Asim?
Asim, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I realized. Yeah, so this is something which India is actually quite behind in some sense, and I think that is one of the main reasons where once we were very big in textile and are now not really having such a huge presence. If you look at specifically Germany, which has done phenomenal in the area of textile and other aspects, especially weaving, their instruments and the machinery which they make, they themselves have the machinery itself having those IoT devices. So they have by design, it's not a retrofit. So most of these machines and modern machineries in Europe especially are so built that they have these artificial intelligent built-in IoT devices in it. So in that sense, India is in a sense far behind because we don't have all of these things. Whereas in Europe and other places in the US, specifically in Europe, they are far more advanced. Now, coming to that aspect, however, we don't really have to necessarily change our capital equipment to have these built in. We can also retrofit them. And that is something which we really need to be aware of. And at a very fractional cost, we can retrofit them. And what sometimes we feel is that our Indian manufacturers, and we work with few of them who are trying to manufacture machine tools basically for the cotton and for the textile industry, they really do not know that how they can incorporate these tools. And I think we can actually have a huge industry, specifically the capital goods industry in the textile area, where we could have value addition done at the very beginning of these capital goods. And in that sense, India, however, is still quite behind. So Europe is much advanced than us, and we are lacking. In that sense, actually, China has done a lot of stuff. So China has gone far ahead of us. So that's another aspect. But again, I would say there are some subtle aspects where we have advantage, and we should be able to manage that.
Great, thank you so much.
One point on this as well. There are factories, for example, in the US, right, where they have tried vertical integration using automation plus AI. So if there's a breakage in yarn spinning or something, they're able to identify it using a camera. You know, they're completely end-to-end automated. So you'll have a robot moving, for example, fabric, you know, which has come off the dryer or something. It'll move through robotic trolley to the next station, right? So there are all these different aspects which are taking place. So a lot of them do use AI, a lot of them do use machine learning, a lot of them do use robotics. So that's it.
Great, thank you so much. I think we don't have no more questions. So if there is no more questions, can we go to the next one? Before I go to my, okay, there is no questions. Before I go to my official Thanksgiving, can I request Mr. Srinivasan to speak a few words? Sir?
Thank you very much. I think we had a very interesting presentation from all three speakers. A lot of interesting questions come too, and I'm sure there will be a lot of takeaway for all the people who have attended the webinar today. I would once again like to thank Business Standard for organizing this, and thank you very much.